one of the most closely monitored bodies of water in the world. Larger ships have to constantly share their GPS location. And the kind of explosives you'd need to take out 2 pipelines at once is extremely hard to come by. Investigators soon agree. Whoever pulled this off had access to serious resources. This must have been a state actor. The first prime suspect is Russia.
Was wir aber sehr klar sagen können, ist, wer ein Interesse daran hat, dass das zerstört wird. Und da komme ich über kurz oder lang immer wieder auf Russland, weil es um Unsicherheit geht, um steigende Energiepreise.
There's also a possible financial motive. Russian state-owned energy giant Gazprom faced massive damage claims after cutting off gas supplies in summer 2022. Blowing up the pipelines could give them a legal excuse to duck out of those contracts. This is Holger Stark, the deputy editor-in-chief at German weekly newspaper Die Zeit. He has spent months digging into the case.
When I first heard about the explosions, I immediately thought it must be the Russians. It just fits their classic pattern of obstruction, of
Damn, what the Russians do, man?
And to me, it just made perfect sense.
And initially, the suspicion seems to hold up. 4 days before the explosion, a Danish naval vessel patrols near the island of Bornholm. It spots 6 Russian ships, right where the pipelines will be blown apart 4 days later. They're dark ships.
It might be the
their AIS
Russians
transponders are switched off and they're not broadcasting their location. One of them is the SS
Yo, what the
750,
hell?
a 100-yard special ops vessel designed for underwater missions. On board, a mini
it might actually be the Russians. Damn.
submarine equipped with
Russians
cranes
are
for
dirty.
heavy-duty lifting. Exactly the kind of setup you'd need to plant explosives on a pipeline. 3 months earlier, 2 other Russian military vessels have been spotted dark shipping the very same waters, right around the future blast site. What exactly were they doing there? Around the same time, suspicion also turns toward the United States. Just weeks before Russia invaded Ukraine, President Biden and German Chancellor Scholz held a joint press conference.
I don't think Biden is that smart enough to do this type of action. You know what I'm
If Russia
saying?
invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
6 months later, both pipelines explode. That's when Seymour Hersh steps in, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative
Seymour
journalist
Hersh.
known for uncovering major scandals, but also for spreading highly controversial theories. He claims that US Navy divers planted the explosives on the pipelines during a NATO exercise in summer 2022. He also says they got help from a Norwegian Navy minesweeper and surveillance aircraft. The alleged motive: to push Russian gas out of the European market and make room for American liquefied natural gas. Norway is another key supplier and would benefit too. But Hersh's story quickly comes under fire. The flight data recordings from Norway do not match his timeline, and the ships he mentions haven't even been near the site.
My impression is that Cy Hersh had just one source, an old source from the world of intelligence, someone who picked up fragments of a story and then filled in the rest. Hersh admits that he had only this one source and that this source didn't witness anything firsthand, and to me, that's already a red flag.
Hersh is 88 by now. In recent years, he has been repeatedly criticized for relying on thin sources and pushing shaky claims. He no longer comments publicly on his Nord Stream story. The strongest lead points to neither Russia nor the United States. Shortly after the explosion, Holger Stark gets a crucial tip-off from a well-connected source inside the intelligence community.
So I called someone I've known for a long time and asked, was it Russia? He just looked at me and, with a very long and quiet and doubtful look, he slowly shook his head.
After the explosions, German authorities immediately launch an investigation. The Federal Prosecutor's Office picks up the case. The case is so politically sensitive that several major media outlets start joining forces. You'll find the links to their impressive research in the description. Julia Klaus is an investigative journalist at public German TV broadcaster ZDF. She is part of one of the extensive research teams. She tells us that despite the heavy secrecy, they were able to get their hands on one crucial piece of information.
So we picked up that the Andromeda yacht may have played a role in the operation.
The Andromeda is a small German sailing yacht just over 15 yards long. But could such a small boat be used to pull off such a sophisticated military-grade underwater demolition? It does have one major advantage. It's discreet. And unlike larger ships, it doesn't have to broadcast its position. The journalists uncovered that the Andromeda was chartered between August 27 and September 24 from a German boat rental company called Mola Yachting. The total rent of 11,900 euros was wired by a Polish travel agency. They submitted 2 passport copies, one Bulgarian, one Romanian. The name on the Romanian ID was Stefan Marcu. Marcu lives in Moldova, a small landlocked country in Eastern Europe. Julia Klaus and her team get on a plane and pay him a visit.
We were sitting in his garden, and when we showed him the passport number, he immediately recognized it. He said it matched his old passport, which had long been expired. But he had no idea how his personal data ended up in connection with the Nord Stream bombing.
That's crazy.
The passport was fake, just like the Bulgarian one issued to a man named Mikhail Popov. Another team of journalists head out to Wiek harbor on the German Baltic island of Rügen, where the Andromeda crew has last been seen. They speak to the harbor master, who remembers seeing them. They talk to other witnesses and even rent the Andromeda themselves. Step by step, they are able to piece together the route the boat most likely took. Meanwhile, Stark and his team follow up on another lead: the Polish travel agency who paid for the yacht. It turns out to be a shell company.
Behind that shell company, we found a Ukrainian businessman, someone who was operating in the gray zones of the underground economy in Kiev. He clearly was being used, obviously as a favor to someone higher up in the chain of command. Charter that boat, pay the bill, don't ask questions.
In March 2023, Stark and his research team published their findings. The timing is delicate. The German public is locked in a heated debate. Should the country send tanks to support Ukraine? And now reports suggest that Ukrainians may have attacked a German-Russian energy pipeline. That's politically explosive news. There's also speculation that the Andromeda lead might be a trap, a false flag, something deliberately planned by Russia to confuse the public and stir political doubt in Germany. But behind closed doors, senior officials already know who they should be looking at. German authorities have been zeroing in on a group that likely pulled the strings. June 2022, 3 months before the Nord Stream blast. The German Foreign Intelligence Service BND receives a top-secret report. It's from the Dutch Military Intelligence Service MIVD. They say they've been tipped off about an imminent sabotage operation targeting Nord Stream 1. The suspected culprits, a Ukrainian Special Forces unit traveling with fake passports and a rented boat. The attack is set to be scheduled for June 19. That's only a few days away. Shortly after, another warning comes in from the CIA. They too have been alerted by the Dutch. But June 19 comes around, and nothing happens. The warnings are written off as false alarms. No one notifies the German Federal Police, or the German Navy, or counterterrorism task forces. 3 months later, the pipelines do get hit. Almost exactly the way the Dutch report had predicted. So right away, investigators turn their attention toward Ukraine.
Damn.
January 2023, 4 months after the explosions. On board the Andromeda, investigators find compromising material. DNA, fingerprints, a water bottle, and a single barefoot shoe. And on a table and in the toilet, traces of a powerful underwater explosive called HMX, also known as Octogen. That's the exact same compound found at the Nord Stream blast sites. At this point, the investigators are sure. This boat was part of the secret sabotage operation.
That's crazy.
Who did it? Then comes the key piece of evidence.
I reckon it's Ukraine. Surely it's
It's
Ukraine.
early morning. A van speeds down a rural road. The driver has been hired to take a group of Ukrainians to the port. He has no idea who they really are, but he carries their diving gear in the back. He is going fast. Too fast.
What
The
do you
speed
mean?
camera photo shows a white Citroen Space Tourer with Ukrainian license plates.
Oh.
Next to the driver sits an unidentified passenger. Investigators track down the clueless driver.
Ukraine
He confirms
plates.
the identity of the passenger. A Ukrainian national named Volodymyr Z. Bingo. The grainy snapshot marks a turning point. In June 2024, German investigators issue a European arrest warrant for him. Over time, more and more connections start pointing towards Ukraine. Investigators manage to fully identify the alleged Andromeda crew. Journalists even speak with a Ukrainian informant who claims he helped them plan the attack. Today, authorities have a fairly clear picture of what most likely happened.
Chapter 4, Operation Diameter.
Spring 2022. A rented office in Kiev, Ukraine. Inside is a small commando team, allegedly led by a man named Roman Chervinsky. He appears to be a legend in Ukrainian intelligence circles. Several members of his unit have also trained with the CIA. Their specialty? Covert ops and sabotage. They are Ukrainian patriots. And after Russia's full-scale attack on their country, they are eager to strike back. Hard.
Sheesh.
They choose to target the Nord Stream pipelines, a symbol of Russian power that's been pumping billions into Putin's war chest. They need
Damn,
trained
they
divers
look
to
good
pull
and
off
good
such
there,
a deep water
can't lie.
operation. They shortlist 20 candidates and end up picking 4. All civilians. 2 soldiers complete the team. A motley crew of 6 Ukrainians who barely know each other.
No way.
September 8, 2022. It's late morning at Wiek Harbor on Rügen Island. A sail yacht pulls into the dock behind the harbor office.
This is
It's
sneaky
hailing
behind
straight
enemy
from
lines.
Vostok, where it was chartered 2 days ago by the small crew, posing as tourists. But they're not here for a sailing trip. They've come to carry out one of the most brazen acts of sabotage in history.
Damn.
Introducing Volodymyr Z, a heating engineer in his mid-40s who lives in Poland. He's also a scuba instructor specialized in deep diving expeditions. Next up is Daria Kormankova, at least that's her cover name. Early 40s.
It's crazy
petite,
how
brown hair.
Russia
She
attacked
and
with
her
full
husband
force,
run a
but
small
then
diving school
Ukraine
in
got
Ukraine.
backed by just a little group.
Volodymyr Z
It's
used
crazy.
to work for them as a scuba
Less
instructor.
is more for real.
Then there's
We're
Daria's
gonna watch
husband,
the Out of War
codenamed
after this
Folgat,
actually.
another experienced deep-sea diver. Pale,
Because this is like
boyish,
lessons from
thinning
the Out
hair.
of War.
The 4th member is the commander, codenamed Rubik. Seasoned combat soldier, built like a tank, and a capable diver himself. He's the mission lead aboard Andromeda. He stays in constant contact with Kiev via 16 burner phones and a stash of prepaid SIMs.
What the hell?
The
16
5th one is
renophones?
the captain, an active duty soldier. Grumpy, hostile, broad frame. A witness will later describe him as a guy who's had one too many hamburgers. The 6th one is the assistant, short, middle-aged. The group gets to work right away.
That's crazy.
A harbor worker watches them from a distance. They're unloading grocery bags from a van, carrying them to the boat across the parking lot. Each walk is about 100 yards. The assistant is standing next to an unusual amount of compressed air cylinders. The harbor master walks over. "You guys need a hand? You can pull the van closer if you want." The assistant shakes his head. "We're good."
No way.
The harbor master doesn't know that these cylinders are not for diving. Each one of them is packed with up to 35 kilos of HMX explosive. This would be the
Sheesh, man.
last real chance to stop them. It passes. Shortly after, the Andromeda casts off.
The Andromeda,
Operation
such a small
Diameter
boat
is
too.
underway. Here's the path both Nord Stream pipelines take. Nord Stream 1 and the recently completed Nord Stream 2.
Honestly,
From
if I
Rügen,
were
the
Ukraine,
Andromeda makes its way
I
to
would
Bornholm
sabotage
and
Russia
docks
like
again
this
on the
too.
small Danish island of
because they
Christiansand.
did destroy a lot.
Out on the open water, the crew
Cannot
starts
lie,
assessing
bruh.
the situation. The boat is past its prime. The wood creaks with every turn. The walls are scuffed and the autopilot's broken. The 75 horsepower diesel
No
engine
way.
rattles like an old farm tractor. It's quiet out here.
Out
on
of
the
all
Baltic
boats,
Sea.
the boats
They
that's the
only pass
weakest.
a few ships,
Wait,
and
what?
no one really pays attention to a small
crazy.
sailboat bobbing on the waves. The crew uses sonar technology to echolocate the pipelines. They probably conduct multiple expedition dives, but progress is slow. They can only do one dive per day. By the end of the second week
Why?
of September, a storm rolls in. Winds of 20 knots whip across the sea and the waves climb up to nearly 7 feet.
Yo, what the
The
hell? And they
Andromeda
got
takes
explosives
shelter
too.
in a small harbor in Sandhamn, Sweden.
How they
A few
survive
days
when
later,
with explosives
the
on
sky
the
is
boat where
clear
it's
and the
going
wind dies down.
like
But
that?
the waves are still rocking the boat and most of the crew have fallen seasick. Conditions are barely stable enough to dive. The sonar hums as the crew awaits intention. Then, finally, a signal. They found the pipeline. About 80 yards below, directly beneath the Andromeda. It's go time. Now or never. They lower a weighted rope into the water. About a minute later, it hits the seabed. A plastic canister wrapped in a trash bag bobs on the surface as a makeshift buoy. It's marking the spot so they don't drift off. 2 divers strap on their scuba tanks. Then they grab a separate tank filled with high-powered explosives. They
Sheesh.
carefully slip off the stern and attach the tank to the rope. One last check and they disappear, following the rope down into the dark.
It's some crazy shit, man.
This is the
I never knew the
pipeline,
military was this
260 feet
advanced.
below the surface. It's cold and dark. The pressure on the human body down here is about 9 times higher than at sea level.
The
2
fuck?
beams of light cut through the darkness. They only have about 15 minutes on the seabed. To plant the bomb, they need to locate a connection joint along the pipeline. Their headlights can only illuminate 6 to 7 feet ahead of them. After a bit, they find a seam. They place a silicone pad between the bomb and the pipe to amplify the blast. Done. All set. At this depth, standard scuba gear won't cut it. The divers are most likely using advanced equipment, rebreathers, multiple tanks, and trimix breathing gases. To avoid decompression sickness, they need to ascend slowly, with several stops along the way. The whole
What the
process takes
fuck?
at least 40 minutes. The
What
Andromeda
the
has
hell?
kept moving during the dive
I'd
to
want to
avoid
be out of that
suspicion.
water ASAP.
Now
What
the
you mean
ship returns to the
decompression?
makeshift buoy. The crew is relieved. They
Sickness.
carry out multiple additional dives over the course of several days. They plant at least 6 bombs across the 2 pipelines. Each charge is fitted with a timer, set to go off on September 26. On the morning of September 23rd, the Andromeda is spotted drifting at Rostock Harbor. The staff from Mola Yachting arrive to check in the rental boat, but find it empty. The crew is already gone.
Unexplained
No
leaks
way.
in 2 major pipelines from Russia
That's crazy.
into Europe have become a major cause of concern for the European Union.
Denmark, Poland and Sweden say they believe leaks in 2 major Russian gas pipelines to Europe are the result of sabotage.
Tonight, sabotage at sea. That's what President Biden is calling the leaks and explosions along the Nord
Damn.
Stream pipelines.
Це йдеться в заяві прокурора Матса Юнквіста.
3 days later, the saboteurs can watch the outcome of their mission live on TV. It worked. Except for one detail. One of the 2 lines of Nord Stream 2 remains intact. The crew accidentally hit
No
the
way.
first line twice.
Bruh, no way. Yeah, I want to know what happened in the aftermath.
June 2024. Polish authorities receive a European arrest warrant for Volodymyr Z by Germany's Federal Prosecutor's Office. Inside, they find the suspect's listed address in a residential suburb of Warsaw. Following EU law, Polish prosecutors are expected to act on such a warrant and detain the suspect. No questions asked. But apparently, the Poles do nothing.
It's very likely the Poles who tipped off the Ukrainian diver and also the Ukrainian government in order to get him out of the country in time before he could have been arrested and put on trial in Germany.
On the morning
Sheesh,
of
man.
July 6, at exactly 6:20 a.m., a BMW with Ukrainian diplomatic plates crosses the Polish border into Ukraine. The co-driver is Volodymyr Z. The suspected saboteur has vanished ever since.
No
And
way.
for now, no arrest warrants have been issued for the rest of the crew. due to a lack of evidence.
Bro gypped off in a Germany car too, that's
To
crazy.
this day, it is not definitely proven who was behind the Nord Stream attack. All suspects deny any involvement. That said, there's a growing body of evidence pointing toward the Andromeda theory. The yacht, the forged documents, the diving gear, the witness testimonies, the DNA.
Yeah, gotta be Ukraine,
it all
bro.
paints a compelling picture. There are credible indications that the former commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces approved the plan. Still, nothing is off the table. Some experts haven't ruled out the possibility that the Andromeda may have been part of a more elaborate deception or false flag operation by Russia or the US. But many experts do believe the attack was likely carried out by Ukrainian patriots. Whether
Nah, low key.